He's even copying my shouts now. I'm made up with that. That's made my day. But I'd love to come to Bernabeu and punch your face in. You know what I mean? Do it in Spain in front of your fake countrymen because you're really German.
Ilia Topuria, the fearsome two-division champion, just walked away from Paddy Pimblett in Qatar. Now, let me be clear. He didn't walk away from a fight. He walked away from a conversation. The very man who starched legends like Volkanovski, Holloway, and Oliveira literally retreated from a war of words. And Paddy's response? Well, he called him exactly what you'd expect. But the reason this moment matters goes so much deeper. This is the story of the Qatar explosion, a feud built on blood and honor, and the making of what might just be MMA's most toxic rivalry. Picture the scene, November 21st, 2025, in Doha, Qatar. The scorching desert heat beating down outside the Abha Arena was nothing compared to the inferno brewing inside a hotel courtyard. This is where two of mixed martial arts' most combustible personalities were about to finally detonate years of accumulated, pure hatred in a confrontation that would set the entire combat sports world on fire. You see, the UFC's historic first event in this Middle Eastern nation was supposed to be about the main event, Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker, a lightweight clash with massive title implications. It was supposed to be a celebration of the promotion's global expansion, about bringing the octagon to new markets, to new audiences, absolutely hungry for the violence and spectacle that only the UFC can deliver. Instead, what completely hijacked the attention of millions of fight fans around the globe happened far away from the cage, far from the bright lights and the roaring crowd. It all went down in a simple hotel courtyard, where two men who genuinely, profoundly despise each other finally crossed paths after years of escalating verbal warfare. And this wasn't your typical fight promotion banter. This had ventured into territory that touched on war, on nationality, on devastating family tragedy, and on a sense of personal dignity that most fighters, believe it or not, rarely breach. The lightweight champion, Ilia Topuria, had just landed in Qatar to corner his younger brother Alexandre, who was fighting on the prelims. Meanwhile, Paddy Pimblett, Liverpool's most famous fighting export since his meteoric rise, transformed him from a Cage Warriors champ into an international phenomenon, was where to support his own teammates from next-generation MMA. Two men, same hotel, same week, fueled by the same 4-year-old hatred. A collision wasn't just possible, it was absolutely inevitable. It was as certain as gravity pulling an apple to the ground, as certain as pure hatred drawing enemies together.
I agree with him there. I agree with him. Like, I wouldn't want to hurt Charles Oliveira either. You know what I mean? I like Charles. He's a very good fighter.
But Pimblett's assessment of Topuria was, to put it mildly, far less charitable. In fact, it wasn't just uncharitable. It was a brutal, systematic dismantling of the champion's tough guy persona. The absolute core of his verbal attack centered on what he perceived as Topuria's cowardice. Not a lack of courage inside the cage, where his record speaks for itself, but a profound cowardice in facing him directly, man-to-man, when the cameras weren't rolling and the UFC PR team wasn't there to script the interaction.
I give you that respect, but you will never knock me out. I'm going to submit. You'll live. What I'm going to do is I'm going to... No, you can't knock me out.
See there though, that was embarrassing from him. He copied what McGregor said. I'm going to put my balls on your forehead. He copied what McGregor said. Like, that's the thing about him, man. He's not original.
That's funny, though. I don't think he's going to accept it. He'll accept it tomorrow. You see, Pimblett zeroed in on the moment, calling it flat-out embarrassing for Topuria. He pointed out how Topuria copied one of Conor McGregor's most infamous lines, "I'm going to put my balls on your forehead." That's the thing about him, Pimblett sneered. He's just not original. And let me tell you, that accusation of being unoriginal is a surgical strike against the very persona Topuria has so carefully cultivated. He wants to be seen as the next great combat sports superstar, a man who can sell fights with his own unique charisma while finishing legends in spectacular fashion. He wants to carry that promotional mantle that Conor McGregor once held before his personal troubles diminished that incredible star power. Pimblett's claim that Topuria just copies McGregor's material, his trash talk, his swagger, even his damn back tattoo, completely undermines that entire narrative. It reduces the champion from a powerful, original voice to nothing more than a cover band, just playing someone else's greatest hits. Now, to truly understand why this confrontation matters, why it sent social media into an absolute frenzy and had fans demanding the UFC make this matchup immediately, you have to understand the history between these two men. This isn't some manufactured rivalry cooked up by promoters to sell pay-per-views to a gullible audience. This isn't the typical trash talk that fighters use because their managers told them controversy sells. No, this is genuine deep-seated animosity that has festered for nearly 4 years, rooted in comments about war, nationality, and family tragedy lines that most fighters would never ever dream of crossing.
Una rubia.
I've never seen this.
La verdad que si pudiera yo elegir una pelea, pelearía con él porque
He's even copying my shouts now.
cae fatal, la verdad. Y a mí me encantaría regalarle ese combate a todos los fanáticos porque desde hace mucho tiempo yo creo que dentro de la UFC no se ve una pelea de verdad.
Oh, lad, he called me a sausage. Easy. I'm made up with that. That's made my day.
Pimblett later mocked Topuria with a viciousness that was personal and relentless. No one even knows you by your name, lad, he sneered. You're known as Hand Sanitizer Boy. You little mongrel. He didn't just attack his actions. He attacked his very identity, his heritage. You pretend you're Georgian, but you're not, Pimblett taunted. You were born in Germany, and you live in Spain, you little chorizo. You fucking Spanish sausage. Fast forward to June. Topuria knocks out the legendary Charles Oliveira in the very first round at UFC 317 to claim the lightweight title. It should have been his moment, a coronation of a new king. Instead, Paddy Pimblett defied UFC brass, climbed right into the octagon, and got in Topuria's face for an impromptu showdown. Topuria immediately shoved him, and just like that, the grudge match everyone on the planet wanted seemed closer than ever. But then came the contract games, the championship politics, and the messy business of hate. The months that followed UFC 317 should have been a straightforward path to one of the most anticipated fights in recent memory. Topuria held the lightweight belt, the most prestigious prize in the sport's deepest division. Pimblett had just finished Michael Chandler, a former Bellator champion and a perennial top 5 contender, with a devastating third-round TKO that had silenced all the critics who questioned if he belonged at that elite level. The storyline was perfectly built in, requiring zero artificial drama. The animosity was undeniably real, documented across years of confrontation. The promotional machine was revved up and ready to go, with both fighters possessing the charisma and social media firepower to generate insane pay-per-view numbers. Instead, what we got was a frustrating game of contract chess that left fans wondering if either fighter actually wanted to settle their beef inside the octagon, or if the rivalry itself had become more valuable as a promotional tool than as a resolved conflict with a clear winner.
I done to him what no one else has ever done before and beat him up for 3 rounds. You know, when we had close fights with top contenders, and everyone underestimates me. Everyone looks at me and thinks I'm a child still and doesn't think I'm that good until they actually get in there with me.
The message from Pimblett was crystal clear. If he was such an easy fight, such a simple payday, why wasn't Topuria signing the contract immediately? What was the holdup? To add fuel to the fire, Pimblett's striking coach, Ellis Hampson, revealed that they were already deep in the process of game planning for Topuria. He's never really had that much bad blood with an opponent before, Hampson explained. A little bit of arguing at press conferences, yeah, but he and Ilia genuinely don't like each other, so that's the fight I think the UFC is going to make. But the big question remained, did Topuria actually want it? His public statements began to tell a completely different story. The championship picture grew more and more complicated by the day, with a whole roster of legitimate contenders jostling for position and making their own cases for a title shot. You had Justin Gaethje, the former interim champ known for his explosive knockout power, who was widely considered the frontrunner. Then there was Arman Tsarukyan, ranked #1 in the division, who might just be the most complete fighter in the weight class. He was supposed to fight Islam Makhachev before a back injury forced him out at the last second, and you could never count out Dan Hooker, a dangerous dark horse capable of shocking anyone. Amidst all this, Pimblett addressed the competition directly, making a compelling case for why his fight with Topuria made the most sense, not just competitively, but commercially.
I just want to fight anyone ranked above me, really. If it's not Ilia, I want a #1 contender fight, but I obviously want Ilia. You know what I mean? He's got the belt. He's who I want to fight. Like I want to fight for a world title. I want to be the UFC world champion. So saying I want anyone other than Ilia is just stupid.
Paddy Pimblett, however, had his own theory about Topuria's path to the top, suggesting it was a smoother ride than most. What truly separated Topuria, what made him a champion, was what he did when he got his opportunities. He didn't just win, he annihilated 3 legends in a row, Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway, and Charles Oliveira. But Paddy, of course, had his own unique perspective on that incredible Oliveira performance. Pimblett even offered his own stylistic analysis, breaking down the potential matchup. The reckoning, filled with predictions, provocations, and the promise of an inevitable collision, was drawing near. As November 2025 wound to its conclusion, the lightweight division found itself in an unprecedented state of chaos that desperately demanded a resolution. Topuria held the belt, but was facing mounting pressure from every conceivable direction. Contenders demanded their shot, fans demanded the Pimblett fight, and the UFC demanded activity. Then on November 27th, Topuria released a statement that shocked the MMA world and threw everyone's plans into complete disarray. He announced he would not be fighting in the first quarter of 2026 due to a difficult personal moment that required him to focus on his children. This immediately led to speculation about his marriage, though Topuria never elaborated. What mattered was the impact. If the champion couldn't defend his title, an interim belt was necessary. The UFC pivoted quickly, announcing Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the interim lightweight championship, a fight to determine who would face Topuria upon his return. Sorokin's fanbase erupted in absolute outrage, seeing it as a massive injustice. Their man, the #1 contender, was passed over for a fighter they felt had Paddy privilege, where star power trumped competitive merit. But Pimblett had been preparing for this moment for years. His camp had transformed him into a legitimate contender, and mentally, he'd been living inside Topuria's head from day one, playing a long game of psychological warfare that was finally reaching its endgame.
But what he said there is, I wouldn't throw a punch at first when he would. You're an emotional little baby, lad. When I come out to fight him, he'd try and take me head off with the first 3 punches he throws.
That comparison to Jose Aldo was particularly sharp, and it revealed the true depth of Pimblett's strategic thinking. You have to remember, Jose Aldo was the most dominant featherweight champion in UFC history before Conor McGregor ended his decade-long reign with a single left hand in just 13 seconds. It was a finish so shocking it remains one of the most replayed moments in sports history. The key was that Aldo's emotional state heading into that fight, provoked by months of McGregor's relentless verbal assaults, targeting his wife, his country, and his pride, directly contributed to the rushed, reckless attack that left him unconscious on the canvas. Pimblett was explicitly stating his intention to replicate that exact blueprint against Topuria. He wanted to provoke him, to get under his skin, and to make him abandon the composed, calculated approach that had served him so well. He wanted Topuria to fight with the kind of emotional recklessness that creates openings for devastating counter-strikes. In a deeply revealing interview, Pimblett even compared their rivalry to the legendary feud between Khabib and McGregor. "It's the only fight to make," he declared. "We haven't seen two people genuinely dislike each other this much since Conor and Khabib. I hate him. I absolutely hate him. I want to inflict pain on his life."
That's just embarrassing that he said balls on your head because he's copied Conor McGregor. Like, be original, be yourself. Don't copy what somebody else has said. But I can see so many ways that
the sheer violence in Pimblett's predictions went far beyond your typical fight promotion hype. He wasn't just claiming he would win. He was describing a level of disfigurement. His recent comments expanded on this very theme. When Charles and Ilia walked out, Pimblett recalled, "I said straight away, Ilia is going to win. I could just tell by the way Charles looked nervous. Ilia didn't. He was calm, collected, he's good at that. And that's when he's at his best. But I'm already in his head. Never mind when we have a few press conferences, I'm already in his head, as it is. So yeah, I'm the one. I'm his kryptonite." That claim carried significant weight, especially given Topuria's undefeated record. No opponent had ever managed to crack the Georgian's mental armor until Pimblett came along. The confrontation in Qatar was proof of concept. Topuria had lost his composure over a simple greeting, and Pimblett's offer to fight Topuria at the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium in Spain was the ultimate power move. He wasn't just willing to fight on Topuria's adopted home turf, he was actively demanding it all while using that fake countryman jab to attack Topuria's complicated national identity with surgical precision. As of late November 2025, Topuria's record stood at a perfect 17-0, with his knockout streak over Volkanovski, Holloway, and Oliveira ranking among the most impressive in modern MMA history. On paper, examining pure technique, he was the superior fighter. Pimblett's UFC record, however, showed a steady climb, culminating in that brutal finish of Michael Chandler, proving he could absorb punishment from the hardest hitters and respond with even greater violence. Betting markets reflected this uncertainty. Topuria would likely open as a significant favorite, but Pimblett's size advantage at lightweight was real. He walked around substantially heavier and would enter the cage with a noticeable edge in height, reach, and mass, not to mention his world-class grappling credentials.
Lad, if I wasn't injured for a year and got an easy route to the belt like him, I would have been champ by now. You know what I mean? But I got injured for a year, had to get surgery. My wife had twins, I had to take 6 months off of that. You know what I mean? If I didn't have to have these little times off, these intervals, and I had an easy route to the belt like he did, I would have been champion by now.
But, lad, if I wasn't injured for a year and got an easy route to the belt like him, I would have been champion by now, Pimblett argued, laying out his own narrative. Know what I mean? I got injured for a year, had to get surgery, my wife had twins, I had to take 6 months off for that. If I didn't have these little times off and I had an easy route like he did, I'd be champion. The fight's eventual occurrence seems utterly inevitable. There's simply too much money on the table and far too much genuine animosity to leave unresolved. The comments about the war still fester, a wound that refuses to heal, and Pimblett's deflections only serve to keep Topuria focused on past grievances. In the end, that confrontation in Qatar accomplished exactly what Pimblett needed it to. It reminded the world that this rivalry transcends rankings and exists on its own plane of intensity. It demonstrated, conclusively, that Topuria's legendary composure has limits, and that Pimblett knows exactly how to test them, and it generated the kind of headlines that forced the UFC's hand. Topuria walked away from a verbal spat, and in Pimblett's frame, that made him a coward, a paper champion. Whether it was actually cowardice or strategic restraint, keenness or wisdom, will only be answered when these two finally meet inside that locked octagon. 4 years. That's how long this hatred has been building, from tweets about war and tragedy to hand sanitizer bottles flying across hotel kitchens. This isn't promotional theater. This is real, and everyone watching knows it. Topuria has the knockouts. Pimblett has the size and the ground game, but more than anything, they both have something to prove that transcends a championship belt. This is personal. This is for legacy. The only question left is, when that cage door closes, and there's nowhere to walk away to, which version of hatred wins? The cold, calculated executioner, or the man who's been living rent-free in his head for 4 long years? The world is waiting, the fighters are ready, and the reckoning is coming.